3 rings for $1, step right up. For 22 years, Ezra Blackwood had been running the same carnival game at county fairs across the Midwest. Kids loved trying to toss rings onto milk bottles, parents enjoyed the nostalgic carnival atmosphere, and everyone saw him as just another friendly carny with a gap-toothed smile and stories from the road. Nobody questioned why a man in his 60s chose to live out of a trailer, moving from fair to fair with nothing but a carnival game and a worn duffel bag. Until the day a convicted child predator started stalking kids at the Millbrook County Fair, and everyone discovered that Ezra wasn't just good at spotting cheaters at his ring toss game. He was a retired U.S. Marshal who had spent 25 years hunting the most dangerous fugitives in America. Welcome to Faces Behind Stories. Before we continue this powerful story of hidden vigilance, carnival life, and a protector who never stopped watching over children, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who guard the innocent in the most unexpected places. The Millbrook County Fair sprawled across 20 acres of farmland like a colorful dream made real. Ferris wheels turned against the evening sky, carnival barkers called out their games, and the air filled with kettle corn, cotton candy, and diesel exhaust from the rides. At the center of the midway stood Ezra Blackwood's ring toss booth. The setup was simple: 3 rows of milk bottles, and customers tried to toss rubber rings over them to win prizes. 3 rings for $1, step right up, Ezra called out in his practiced carny voice. Every player's a winner. At 63, Ezra looked exactly like what people expected from a carnival operator. Deeply tanned skin weathered by decades under the sun, silver hair, and clothes that smelled of funnel cake grease. His gap-toothed smile made children trust him instantly. But behind that folksy exterior, Ezra's eyes never stopped moving. They tracked every face, cataloged every interaction, and filed away details most people would never notice. What people didn't know was that before he became the friendly ring toss operator, Deputy U.S. Marshal Ezra Blackwood had spent 25 years tracking fugitives across America. The carnival circuit had been perfect cover for someone who needed to disappear. Always moving, always temporary, always surrounded by people who minded their own business. For 22 years, Ezra had convinced himself that his hunting days were over, but hunters never really retire. 3 days into the fair, Ezra noticed him. The man stood at the edge of the midway, not participating in games, just watching. Average height, unremarkable clothes, but his attention was focused exclusively on children. He followed family groups with his eyes, paying attention to kids who wandered from their parents. Most telling was his behavior pattern. He would watch a child for several minutes, then move when parents took notice. Classic predatory surveillance behavior that Ezra had seen hundreds of times during his Marshal days. While Emma prepared for her second toss, Ezra made a subtle gesture that hadn't been used in over 2 decades. He touched his collar twice, activating a concealed recording device he'd hoped never to use again. Emma's second ring clattered off a bottle, and she pouted. "This is too hard." "Tell you what," Ezra said with his gap-toothed grin, reaching for a small stuffed dog. "You got so close, I think you've earned this, little fella." As Emma's family moved on, Ezra noticed the watcher following them toward the petting zoo. The pattern was escalating from observation to stalking. Ezra Blackwood faced a choice he'd been avoiding for 22 years: stay hidden in his carnival persona, or acknowledge that some monsters never stop hunting and some protectors never really retire. That evening, Ezra did something he hadn't done since his Marshal days. He conducted a background investigation. Using resources most carnival operators shouldn't have, he ran facial recognition on photos he'd taken. The results made his blood run cold. Thomas Ray Hutchins, 42, registered sex offender, convicted of child endangerment in 3 states, multiple outstanding warrants, 8 months on the run. Ezra stared at the mugshot on his laptop screen, the same face that had been watching children at his fair for 3 days running. Hutchins wasn't just a predator, he was a fugitive who had been evading law enforcement for 8 months. The next morning brought disturbing confirmation of Ezra's fears. Hutchins appeared again, but his behavior had become more aggressive. He approached families directly, offering to take photos, volunteering to help lost children find their parents, inserting himself into situations where he could gain access to potential victims. "Excuse me," Hutchins said to Maria Santos, whose 6-year-old son had wandered over to pet a carnival pony. "Is this your little boy?" He was asking for his mommy. Maria looked confused. "Mateo, come here, sweetheart. Thank you, but he knows not to wander off." Ezra watched the interaction from his booth, every instinct screaming danger. Hutchins was testing approaches, seeing how easily he could separate children from parents using helpful stranger tactics. When Hutchins began following the Santos family toward the parking area, Ezra made a decision that would blow his cover permanently. "Hey there, friend," Ezra called out, stepping away from his ring toss booth for the first time in 3 days. His voice carried a new authority that made Hutchins stop and turn. "Enjoying the fair?" Up close, Ezra could see the nervous energy of someone living on the run, constantly scanning for threats, ready to bolt at the first sign of law enforcement. Hutchins tried to smile, but his eyes remained calculating. "Yeah, great fair. Just taking in the sights." "I bet you are," Ezra replied, positioning himself between Hutchins and the parking area where families were loading children into cars. "You know, I've been working fairs for over 20 years. You develop an eye for people who don't quite fit the usual pattern." Hutchins tensed. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do, Thomas." Ezra's voice dropped to the tone he'd used during fugitive apprehensions. "Thomas Ray Hutchins, 8 months running from your parole officer, 3 states worth of warrants, and now you're hunting kids at county fairs." The transformation was instant. Hutchins dropped his helpful stranger act and assessed Ezra as a threat. His hand moved toward his jacket pocket, a movement that Ezra had been watching for since the conversation began. "You're making a mistake, old man. I'm just enjoying the carnival." "No mistake," Ezra said calmly. "I've been tracking fugitives longer than you've been breathing. The question is whether you walk away quietly or make this harder than it needs to be." Hutchins made his choice. He ran. What happened next demonstrated why U.S. Marshals have a 98% capture rate for wanted fugitives. Ezra didn't chase, he predicted. 25 years of hunting people had taught him that runners always follow patterns, always choose familiar routes, always make the same tactical mistakes. Instead of pursuing directly, Ezra activated his concealed radio and began coordinating with local law enforcement while simultaneously guiding the fugitive exactly where he wanted him to go. The Millbrook County Fair became a carefully orchestrated trap. While families enjoyed rides and games, unaware of the drama unfolding around them, Ezra coordinated a manhunt using skills that had made him one of the Marshal Service's most effective fugitive recovery specialists. "Suspect heading east toward the agricultural barns," Ezra reported through his encrypted radio. "Adult male, 5'10", approximately 180 pounds, blue jacket, khaki pants, wanted federal fugitive, considered dangerous around children." Sheriff Patricia Vance's voice crackled back immediately. "Ezra Blackwood, what the hell are you doing at my county fair?" "Working, apparently," Ezra replied, using his knowledge of the fairgrounds to predict Hutchins' movement. "Set up containment at the north exit. He's going to try to blend with the crowd leaving through the main gate." Sheriff Vance had worked with Ezra during his Marshal days, a joint operation that had captured a fugitive murderer hiding in her county. She knew better than to question his tactical judgment. "Units in position." "You sure about this?" "I've been watching him for 3 days, Patricia. He's escalating. Tonight was going to be his move." Through the crowd, Ezra could see Hutchins trying to lose himself among families heading toward the exit. But Ezra had spent decades learning to track people who didn't want to be found. Every movement told a story, every choice revealed the fugitive's psychology. "He's going to double back toward the midway," Ezra predicted. "Thinks he can hide in the crowd around the rides, have someone cover the Ferris wheel." Hutchins did exactly what Ezra expected. Panicked, he reversed direction and tried to disappear into the busiest part of the fair. What he didn't know was that he was running straight into a perfectly coordinated law enforcement response, guided by someone who understood both the terrain and the prey. The apprehension was swift and professional. Hutchins found himself surrounded by sheriff's deputies who seemed to know exactly where he would be before he got there. The families enjoying the fair barely noticed as a dangerous predator was quietly removed from their midst. As Hutchins was led away in handcuffs, the Millbrook County Fair buzzed with rumors and questions. Who was the old carny who had orchestrated the capture? How had a ring-toss operator known to call the sheriff? Why did law enforcement treat him like one of their own? Sheriff Vance approached Ezra as he stood watching the arrest, his gap-toothed smile replaced by the serious expression of someone who had just prevented a tragedy. 22 years, Ezra. 22 years I've been wondering what happened to the best fugitive hunter I ever worked with. I've been right here, Patricia, just watching over things in a different way. Why didn't you call it in sooner? Why handle it yourself? Ezra looked out over the fairgrounds, where children were still laughing on rides, parents were still buying cotton candy, and families were still creating the kind of innocent memories that made life worth protecting. Because this is my beat now, he said simply. These are my people. For 22 years, I've been moving from fair to fair, town to town, making sure kids can enjoy being kids without monsters like Hutchins hunting them. The truth was more complex than Ezra let on. After 25 years of hunting fugitives, he had burned out on the bureaucracy, the politics, and the constant exposure to humanity's darkest elements. The Carnival circuit had offered him a chance to stay connected to law enforcement while surrounding himself with joy instead of violence. But some instincts never fade. The ability to spot danger, to read predatory behavior, to coordinate tactical responses. These skills had made him invaluable in his new life, even if nobody knew he possessed them. The next morning, Ezra Blackwood was back at his ring-toss booth, calling out to families in his practiced Carney voice. The arrest had made local news, but the story focused on law enforcement cooperation rather than the carnival operator who had made it possible. 3 rings for $1? Step right up, Ezra called to a young family approaching his booth. Every player's a winner. To most people, nothing had changed. He was still the friendly old carny with the gap-toothed smile and the impossible game. But word had spread through certain circles, law enforcement networks, federal databases, and the informal communication systems that connected people who spent their lives protecting others. Sheriff Vance stopped by before Ezra packed up his booth for the next fair. You know, we could use someone like you on a more official basis. Consultant work, maybe. The Marshal service has been asking about you for years. Ezra handed a stuffed animal to a little girl who had just missed all 3 tosses. Thanks, Sheriff, but I've got my territory covered. 28 states following the Carnival circuit. You realize you're probably covering more ground than most active marshals? Maybe, Ezra said, beginning to pack his game into the trailer that had been his home for over 2 decades. But out here, I get to see the good guys win every day. Kids laughing, families having fun, communities coming together. That's worth protecting. As the Millbrook County Fair packed up and prepared to move to the next town, Ezra reflected on the strange path that had brought him here. He had started as a lawman dedicated to hunting monsters. He had evolved into a protector who used carnival games as camouflage while maintaining vigilant watch over America's children. The carousel played its tinny music one last time as workers dismantled the rides. Tomorrow, the fair would set up in another town, bringing joy to another community. And Ezra Blackwood would be there, running his ring-toss game, watching the crowds and making sure that predators like Thomas Ray Hutchins never had the chance to steal childhood innocence. 3 weeks later, at the Harrison County Fair in Indiana, Ezra noticed another watcher. Different face, same predatory behavior. By now, law enforcement across the Midwest had learned to take his calls seriously. The capture was swift and professional, with minimal disruption to the families enjoying their evening at the fair. 2 months after that, in Missouri, Ezra's vigilance prevented what could have been a tragic abduction. The grateful parents never learned who had quietly alerted security to the danger their daughter faced. The Carnival circuit became Ezra's patrol route, 28 states following the seasonal fair schedule, always watching, always protecting. He had found a way to continue serving without wearing a badge, to hunt monsters without losing sight of the innocence worth preserving. Other carnival operators began to notice patterns. Whenever Ezra Blackwood worked a fair, dangerous people seemed to get caught. Troublemakers disappeared. Children stayed safe. Nobody asked too many questions. Carnival folks understood the value of someone who kept the predators away from their community. Ezra's reputation spread through channels that most people never see. Federal databases noted an unusual pattern of fugitive captures along the Midwest Carnival circuit. Law enforcement agencies began coordinating with fair schedules. Parents started feeling safer when their kids asked to go to carnivals where the nice ring-toss man worked. But to the children who tried to beat his impossible game, to the parents who trusted him with their family's fun, and to the communities that welcomed the traveling fair, Ezra remained exactly what he appeared to be. A friendly carny with a gap-toothed smile who made everyone feel like they could win something special. Today, if you visit county fairs across the American Midwest, you might encounter a weathered man running a ring toss game. He'll call out in a practiced carny voice, encourage kids who miss their tosses, and hand out prizes with a gap-toothed grin. What you probably won't realize is that you're meeting one of the most effective protectors of children in America, a retired U.S. Marshal who has spent over 2 decades making sure that county fairs remain safe spaces for families to create joyful memories. Ezra Blackwood proved that service takes many forms. Some people protect communities by wearing badges and carrying guns. Others do it by running carnival games and watching crowds with eyes trained to spot danger before it strikes. The most effective guardians are often those who hide in plain sight, who choose to surround themselves with laughter instead of violence, and who understand that the greatest victory isn't capturing the monster. It's making sure children never have to know the monster was there. This story was brought to you by Faces Behind Stories. Have you ever encountered someone whose quiet expertise suggested hidden depths? Tell us about them in the comments below, and let us know what city you're watching from today. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to support the channel. We honor the guardians who continue teaching, one lesson at a time.